Epilogues. Diverging Paths. 64 AR. The dreams had called them. From the now ruined monastery and from the glass-paved lands of Utia. From the abandoned wreckage of Tamakal and from hidden places within the old coastal kingdoms. They brought with them their inventions, their devices, and their notes on the nature of magic. The dreams beckoned them to the secret heart of the Thran, to the caverns of Koilos, and they obeyed. They dug out the passage where it had caved in. They buried the bodies they found there and made a reliquary for the great demon's arm they found, eternally twitching, at the foot of the dais. They repaired the machines as best as they were able, guided by the old knowledge and by their dreams. At last they were finished, and they placed the broken and fading power crystals in their holders, touching the glyphs as they had been instructed. The machines hummed and sputtered and came to a slow, flickering life. Slowly the air pursed and a swirling pool appeared, a gateway into the promised lands beyond. Through that gate came a long mechanical arm, tipped with talons, made to the one that they had venerated as the arm of Jix. The arm beckoned to them and withdrew back into its own lands, and a voice rang out from the gate. "Enter, my children," it said, "enter and taste paradise." Smiling, the priests of the Brotherhood of Jix stepped up to the gateway and entered Phyrexia. What had once been a verdant coastline was now awash with debris. The flotsam of great trees and the jetsam of huge boulders had been driven miles into shore, creating a blasted region along the shore, devoid of life. Among the wreckage was a large metal box, 7 feet in length, 3 feet in width and height. It had weathered the destruction and came to rest among the other far-flung remains of what had been Argoth. Urza stood alongside the box and pressed his hand against the lid. The box's top slid along its casters, revealing the slumbering form of his former apprentice. Tawnos took a breath, then sat bolt upright, gasping for air. His face was pale, and he was covered with dead skin that had flaked off but had nowhere to go within his confinement. Urza waited for Tawnos to regain his composure, standing as patient as a statue. Tawnos took a deep breath, held it, then took a second one. Then he looked around at the devastation that surrounded them. "It is over," said Urza, sitting on the edge of the box. Tawnos gulped and looked around. "This was the safest hiding place I could think of," he said. Urza did not reply. Tawnos said, "Your brother?" "Dead," said Urza. "I." He shook his head. "The demon, the Phyrexian, killed my brother long ago. I never realized it." "Where are we?" asked Tawnos. Urza looked around and sighed, deeply. "The southern coast of Utia." Tawnos blinked. "It has changed." "The world has changed," said Urza, "because of what we did." "Because of what I did." Tawnos climbed out of the box, and Urza helped him. Tawnos felt weak from his incarceration and rubbed his arms and legs, both to shake off the dead skin and to restore circulation. It was cold on this shore, colder than Tawnos remembered it as a youth. "I need one last task from you, my former student," said Urza. "Name it," said Tawnos. "I want you to go west. Find the remains of the Union, the scholars of the Ivory Towers. Tell them what happened here. Tell them what we did, and what we failed to do. See to it that they do not do the same. I trust you to do this." Tawnos looked at the older man, but it seemed to him that Urza was no longer old. His hair was blond again and his shoulders straight. But his eyes were old beyond years and pained beyond mortal hurt. "You can always trust me," said Tawnos. "Where are you going?" Urza turned from his former pupil. "Away," he said after a short while. "I am going." "Away." "It looks as if we could use your help here," said Tawnos. Urza made a noise that Tawnos thought was a nervous laugh. "I don't think the land could survive any more of my help. I need to go away. And think by myself. Where I will not harm others." Tawnos nodded, and said, I don't know if there is any place that far away. Urza shook his head and said, there are places far beyond the land of Terraziar, far beyond world of Dominaria. When I poured my memories into the Silex, I saw them. I see many things that I had never seen before. He turned back to Tawnos, and the master scholar saw Urza's eyes. They were no longer human eyes, but rather two gemstones, radiating with a cascade of multicolored hues, green, white, red, black, and blue. Might stone and weak stone, reunited at last, within the surviving brother. The image was only for an instant, then Urza's eyes were normal again. Urza smiled. I must go away, he repeated. Tawnos nodded slowly, and the man with human crystalline eyes stood. You have long been a student, said Urza. Now go be a teacher. As he spoke, Urza began to fade from view. Slowly the color drained from him, leaving only outlines, then they too faded. Teach them of our triumphs and our mistakes, said a distant voice. And tell Kayla to remember me not as you were, but as you tried to be, finished Tawnos, but he was speaking to empty space. Urza had passed from the world into greater worlds that only his crystalline eyes could see. Tawnos looked around, but there was no sign of life. He struck inland, hoping to get past the worst of the devastation before he had to travel west. He recognized no familiar landmarks, and he had the feeling that he would not for a long time. Tawnos wondered how bad the devastation truly was. And as Tawnos walked inland, he was greeted by the first flakes of snow drifting down a chill wind.